right, welcome. We are the Mental Barbell, your go-to resource for everything mental performance. We're here to talk about sports psychology, and everything in between. Welcome to the ultimate mental performance journey. Welcome to the Mental Barbell. My name is Ian Reardon, and I'm here with my good friend and co-host Anthony Carnevale. Anthony, what's going on, man? How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm recovering from 2 weeks of pretty nonstop sports from the Olympics.
Yeah, it was a lot, especially with the time change. It was challenging to keep up with everything.
For sure, man. And yeah, first event started at like 2 a.m. So if you wanted to catch some stuff, you had to get up real early. But that they did some cool stuff. They had like the four sports going at once screens, and I thought they did a really good job, like keeping everything in context. Everything was kind of put in context with some of the more well-known athletes. So like, this game matters because the winner plays so and so, that kind of stuff. So hats off to I guess NBC, whoever puts on all that production. I'm sure
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
a lot to do.
yeah. Peacock really came through.
Yeah, man. Well, what were some of your notable moments or things that you saw that stood out?
Yeah, like I said, it was hard with the time switch to watch all the events. Definitely I think it was the semifinals game for the men's USA basketball when they were. I think I turned it on in the second half and they were getting beat pretty bad. I think they were down like 15 at one point.
Yeah.
And they kept showing like the players, the bench, the coaches. Nobody seemed to be concerned. It's certainly not as concerned as I was when I was watching at home. Um, and they just slowly pulled away. It just seemed like everybody on the team knew it was going to happen at some point, just not when.
Yeah, I think the game you're talking about the Serbia game, and I saw the same
Yeah,
thing. They were down I think 18 points at one point, and what I loved about it was you could see like the whole team change their tone towards the game kind of all at once. Like it was like they were kind of, I don't even want to say warming up, but things were just kind of messy. And then, they looked up, saw that they were down by almost 20 points, and things kind of clicked in. And you got to see, LeBron's aggression came out. They really became that team. And I think it was cool to see, like, it's like the caged animal, like animal backed into a corner, get to see them turn around and kind of fight for it. So that was definitely a highlight of mine as well.
yeah, it was awesome because it felt like that was the best Serbia could play, and
Yeah.
they weathered the storm. I think Embiid had a huge couple defensive plays. Steph Curry was hitting a couple three, obviously more than a couple threes. He had a huge first half,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was awesome. It was really awesome.
Yeah, and it was interesting to see that there were like a few key moments that fueled the rest of the team. I think Steph hit like two deep threes in a row to kind of start the comeback, and that was all the team needed to kind of pile on and really get the energy back. And it was just a very visible tone shift on the entire team. And then obviously we
Yeah,
know the outcome, so very very cool to see that.
yeah, it was awesome. It was cool.
Yeah. One of my other kind of team-based, moments or stories that I was following along with it was the USA swimming cowbell. I don't know if you were familiar with that, but um,
No, no.
yeah, yeah. So in some of the earlier heats, the team in warm up, Team USA had like a cowbell. So every time someone would go to swim, they'd ring the cowbell, and they'd be kind of obnoxious about it, but it was a show of support. And one of the Australian swimmers came out and was just like, we hate the cowbell. We're trying to, we swim to like shut the Americans up, and it really fueled this big rivalry. But it was just a very interesting use of something like that. That's kind of like a thorn in your opponent's side. Everybody's
Oh
warming
yeah,
up together, so to hear that whole warm up pool just start chanting like USA, USA, and you hear this cowbell. It's interesting because I think it can go both ways, right? It can inspire your team, but it can also fuel your competition to like, it gives them some fuel to come in and beat you. So, again, I was just following that kind of story, and to see how the teams used, that as a weapon, of competition,
mm,
and then how the Australians responded. And so, just an interesting kind of motivational tool that Team USA Swimming was using.
sure. Yeah, I think it. it could be a confidence thing, but it also kind of paints a huge target on your back too. You're coming in with the rather obnoxious cowbell. With
Exactly. Yeah.
I think in swimming we probably already have a big target considering we have some pretty famous athletes that have dominated the games recently,
Sure.
and the cowbell I think really puts the icing on the cake on it.
Right, right. And you're already kind of the villain, right? You're the one that everybody's coming to beat, and now you're adding something to add insult to injury. So as a coach, or as a former coach, I should say, um, that kind of stuff, like I said, it's you really hope it works in your favor, right? You hope it motivates your team rather, more than it motivates your competition. So I've seen it go both ways. I've seen it kind of blow up in someone's face too. So um, interesting the way they used it. I thought it did work out for them, but it definitely created a rivalry that might not have been created otherwise.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of awesome. I'm sure
Yeah,
it's awesome to be a part of it, and if you're not a part of it, you want to destroy it.
absolutely, absolutely. Other notable moments, was Novak Djokovic winning his gold medal. That was pretty tremendous because that kind of puts the final piece of his tremendous career. Uh, it puts that piece together. He finally has that golden Grand Slam. Very emotional to see him playing, and also very cool to see kind of him asserting his stature over the next generation of athletes. His opponent
Mm.
was a real young guy, kind of the up and comer in the sport, and so now Djokovic can say I'm still on top. I'm still the guy to beat. So very cool. And he's I've posted on Instagram about him quite a bit, but he's a huge proponent of mental skills training, things like breathing and mindfulness and controlling controlling your thoughts and emotions in those heightened matches. And you'll remember he was part of the 6 hour tennis match between him and I
Oh
believe
yeah,
Nadal. So he's definitely one of those kind of mindset role models that a lot of people could learn from. So very
oh
cool to see
yeah,
him get that gold medal.
yeah. That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Other little things, Noah Lyles, the American sprinter in the 100 meters, he won gold, obviously, which was awesome. He had been someone who was pretty loud about going into the Olympics. So, again, you hope that you can back up your talk, and he certainly could in the 100. He barely won that race, but a win's a win. He can definitely claim to be the fastest man on earth, which is awesome. Um, I thought it was very interesting the way he responded after his 200. So after his 200 meter, he didn't medal, or I'm not. I don't know if that's
I think
true.
he took third.
He didn't. Yeah,
Yeah, I
he
think he
didn't
got
get
a
the gold medal.
bronze.
But he, afterwards, obviously had announced that he had COVID, um, and maybe that was why he didn't necessarily win. I'm not sure if he was using it as an excuse or not. But one of the things he said is that he was just more proud of than anything. He wasn't disappointed, he wasn't angry, he was just proud in everything that he had accomplished. Again, it's like one of those attitude role models. Like he lost in the event that he probably shouldn't have lost in, and he was still just proud and happy to be where he was, even though the cards didn't kind of fall in his favor. So interesting reaction and interesting kind of story to have followed along with.
Yeah, he certainly created a lot of buzz. I think throughout the Olympics. Um,
Yeah,
it's to still perform and get the gold is impressive. And I think the 200, he lost, but he lost by like a tenth or like a 20th of a second. It's not. I mean, it's like a hair splitting difference in a lot of these races, even though it might not look it in real time. But when you see the time, it's it's a half a step, really, maybe not even more than not more than that.
yeah. No, you're so right, and that even kind of lends itself to what we talk about. There are such small differences. It's like the any given Sunday quote. It's such a game of inches that any
Yeah.
small advantage that you can gain. Whether it be physical or in our case mental. It can be the difference between a gold medal and a bronze medal, or even worse, a gold medal and not qualifying for the Olympics or something like that. So, um, it definitely makes you kind of think about some of that training that goes into those guys, those careers, and again, how short their race is and how close the margins are, but how much time they dedicate to the training and everything else. So, um, very emotionally charged races, certainly at the Olympics.
Oh yeah, and I think the other thing that I think flies under the radar is like you qualify for the Olympics, and then you have to qualify to get a medal. You
Hmm.
like just being in the Olympics doesn't mean that you're competing for the three medals that are available. You
Sure.
have to perform high enough to make it to that point again.
Several
So
times over, right? Yes.
yeah, it's just like you have to kind of be in the moment all the time throughout this process. You kind of
Yeah.
have to be mentally prepared the whole time. It's really impressive, and I don't think that part gets talked about. You wait 4 years, you make it, but then you might not even have a chance to even get the medal that you want.
Right. And so many times, like the margin of prelims to semifinals, then to finals, there's always that third place, that fourth place, that person that just didn't quite make it. And it's hard to watch because they put in just as much training as the person that moved on. But that's what
Right.
sports are about. It's about kind of bearing your soul to the race, to the sport, and seeing how you pan out. And hopefully those athletes can turn that into fuel for training. That's the mentally strong way to go about it. But I know there's athletes that kind of crumble under that. So it's kind of a big fork, I think, in a lot of athletes' lives. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. Another kind of notable story that I was watching was the Team USA, the women's gymnastics team. There were obviously the competition was tremendous, and there were some just remarkably impressive things that those women are able to do with with an uneven bar, with a balance beam, and even just a blank floor. It's pretty crazy. But this competition, there seemed to be a lot longer of a period of time between when they competed and then when they actually got their score. And it was interesting because the cameras often would follow the athlete. They would finish the routine, they'd get off the
Mm,
floor, they'd dry off, they'd take their tape off. And so you had this window of like, you could see what the athlete was actually doing, waiting for their score. And sometimes they're waiting to hear if they medaled or not, or if they, so it's pretty emotionally charged moments. And so for me, it was interesting to watch what the team did for each other. They were always there. No one ever walked off to like an empty bench. The team was always there waiting, giving them high fives no matter how the performance went. It's that unconditional positive support. There was always pats on the back, good job. And then they all kind of waited for the score together. And I thought it was a really good example of a supportive team, and kind of the best environment for the best performances. So definitely cool
mm.
to watch. And I liked, again, getting that kind of behind the scenes access to see really what the athletes were doing in those moments.
Yeah, that's awesome. I didn't see much of the events. I wasn't aware that was happening. It's awesome to hear that, I think it's a lot easier to perform when you feel like you have the support of your teammates, and they're not rooting maybe against you, even if they are competing against you, they're not rooting against you. And I think it's hard to maybe draw the line in that because everybody wants a medal,
Sure.
but you still want your teammate to do well.
Yeah, and in the team events, if somebody does badly or like not as good as you might have expected, there's no sense of like, you screwed it up, or you messed it up for us. Really, um, it's we love you, we great job, move on, let's get to the next thing. So very cool, very again, I hope athletes were watching that to kind of learn how to communicate well in those moments with your teammates. Um,
Mm,
and the last couple of moments that you and I talked about there from the Olympics, that's kind of the purpose of the podcast today, is to talk about how to kind of deactivate in those post performance moments. So like we said with the gymnastics, that they have to do multiple events very quickly, and so for them they might be able to stay a little bit more energized. But for other athletes, notably the French swimmer Leon Marchand, he was the first swimmer to win a gold medal, an individual gold medal in two different events on the same day. And I think the last time that happened was East Germany in 1976. If that gives you some
wow.
perspective, so it's
Jeez.
very very hard. Yeah, it's very hard to do. But what he was able to do well is deactivate between events. I've heard some kind of horror stories of athletes not being able to sleep in between days of competition, or not being able to eat, which is a fight or flight response. That's a hyperadrenaline response. And so these things are obviously not good for performance. So being able to exit the fight or flight stage and kind of enter the rest and digest phase of your performance can be really important. And that's, I think, what Marshawn was able to do in his events, and what a lot of different athletes are, elite athletes are very good at doing during their competitions. Like we said, the gymnasts, anybody that had a prelims, a semifinals, or a finals all in the same day, they have to be able to activate and then also deactivate afterwards. So, we're going to talk a little bit about some strategies to address that, and then also kind of a bigger picture where you want to kind of deactivate after the competition completely. So after the Olympics have concluded, or after your season is concluded, and kind of readjust to now your new normal. So those are kind of the two avenues that we're going to discuss here. Anthony, I kind of let you share your thoughts here about activation, deactivation, and maybe some strategies in the moment to cope with it, to kind of work yourself back down.
Sure. Yeah. And I think when thinking about activation or deactivation, what we're really talking about is kind of managing the mind body arousal connection here. So, when we talk about activation, what do we want to activate? Do we want to activate like our heart rate, our bodies, our minds? And then deactivation, or do we want to do the opposite? So I think we've talked about it previously on a different podcast episode, but the easiest and probably the most obvious way is through breathing. You can do that for activation or deactivation. I would caution you, for activation, you might give yourself a panic attack if you try to do that through breathing. So, but for deactivation, like we said previously, to activate the rest and digest, to activate the more calming part of your nervous system, which will also calm your thoughts, because the mind-body connection here is whatever we're inhaling, we want to double it with the exhale. And that's always going to be the best way to do it. And it can be really hard to do that when you just came out of like a really exhilarating performance, or you need to calm yourself down because you're in a sport where being less excited or activated is better for performance. So we need to recognize the environment, and also recognize what's best for our body and our performance. So like I said, the inhale and then double exhale is going to be the best way to do that. The best part about it is nobody needs to know. Nobody knows that you're doing that. So if you're somebody who's maybe a little bit more shy, or doesn't want people to know how you're going about your business, breathing is a really helpful way to do it, because it's pretty innocuous as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you mentioned kind of the mind body connection there, because, it's not just about calming your body. You could be laying there with a heart rate of 65, totally still. But if your mind is racing, you're not getting the rest that you need, right? Your body or your mind, your brain, as it's racing, is consuming calories, right? It's still working. It's still, even though your body might be calm, your brain and nervous system might still be in activation mode, right? Might be in competition mode. And so, like you said, the idea of breathing, the my best recommendation is do your own research and find your own method, right? There are, I would say, off the top of my head, 15 that I could name, different techniques, different models, methods, guru people out there. So find one that you like. Like Anthony said, there are general principles, right? Try to make your exhale double your inhale. That's a principle that hopefully any good breathing practice has. But find one that works for you. The best method is the one you use and the one you stick to. So breathing is great for this. I also think some sort of mindfulness meditation for those racing thoughts. So again, if you find yourself in that state of like, my heart is calm, my breathing is calm, but I can't stop thinking. We love that the river imagery mindfulness, where you're standing on a bridge and you kind of watch your thoughts drift under the bridge, as leaves would kind of drift down a river. So you're noticing your thoughts, you're accepting your thoughts, and then you're just letting them kind of float on through. And that can be a great way, because you'll visually in your mind see the thoughts being lessened as you meditate, as you are mindful of them. So those are some great things. Let's say if you have a prelims event at noon and then you're not swimming in finals until 5 o'clock, so you've got 4 hours really to just kind of relax and rest. So pretty much as soon as you're done cooling down and warming down, some of these techniques are going to be useful then. So any sort of relaxing breathing, any sort of mental mindfulness or meditation is great because it's going to help you get better sleep. It's going to help you eat better. It's actually going to help your body digest food better. You don't digest food as efficiently when you're under duress, when you're stressed, than when you are rested. So, really being able to lower both your physical arousal, but also your mental arousal and how stimulated your mind is. Um, Anthony, are there any other methods that you've been familiar with that you've had success with?
Yeah, I think just noticing, I think a good starting point is just noticing how your thoughts are going to affect you and your body and your performance. So if you're constantly worried about the outcome of your performance, you might get tense or rigid during your performance. So just noticing how your thoughts are going to affect you, and why are you having these thoughts too? So is it because you're nervous about your performance? Is it a lack of confidence? Or is it kind of one of these things where you're visualizing your performance? I think a lot of the times our cognitions can be harmful or helpful. And the brain's not there to make you feel good. It's there to keep you safe. So when you have these, typically that's why they're happening. So I think maybe sometimes it's like we said, the leaves on the stream, or watching the thoughts run under the bridge is really helpful because we're not attaching anything to the thoughts, we're just observing the thoughts. And I think creating that space between attachment and observation is really helpful and kind of creates a little bit more mental flexibility.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those skills, as with anything in sports or really life, the more you do it, the easier it gets. So, it's a challenge at first, and then it gets easier. I also, like you said, kind of the why are you having the thoughts? Why are you having the racing thoughts or the kind of rumination? So, athletes are kind of always critical. They're notoriously critical, right? We're always analyzing a performance and thinking, how can I make it better? And to some extent, that's what makes you successful, right? You can analyze, you can improve. It's a constant process of improvement. Um, but at a championship meet or at something like the Olympics, you have to think, and this is a good mantra or motto for anyone, is what's important now, right? So let's say I had a prelims that I'm not wasn't 100% at, or there were things that I wanted to fix. I could sit and spend the whole next, however, what my rest period is, just thinking about that performance. But again, what's important right now is getting ready for the next thing. You can't go back and rerun. You can't go back and re-swim. So win. What's important now? And that's a really good mantra to kind of refocus and kind of shift yourself from performance and race mode to rest and relax and digest in between.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's an awesome acronym. What's important to win, what's important now. And to kind of just piggyback off what you were saying, if we continue to ruminate about our bad performances, isn't that the exact opposite of what you'd want to do before a big performance? I would think before a big performance, you'd want to remember all the times you succeeded and performed well, instead of remembering all the times you didn't perform your best.
Sure.
I can imagine thinking negatively and having all these what that would do to you before going into a big performance. I would imagine maybe you're not as confident. You can maybe see it in your posture or your energy. Whereas I think a lot of the great performers, when it's time to perform under the big lights and pressure, they think of all the times that they did perform well instead of all the times that they didn't, and don't harp on the negative, but just kind of what we said, what's important now, focusing on what's in the moment and all the times they have succeeded instead of failed.
Yeah, and the rumination doesn't just have to be in the negative direction, right? Let's say you had a great prelims, right? You ran the race of your life. You had the game of your life, and then you can't sleep or you can't eat because you're so excited about how well you
Mm,
performed, right? Like that's the same problem. It's a different cause, but you're gonna go into the next performance exhausted because you have been so excited, right? So again, it's what's important now. Close the door on the past. Learn from it, whatever you need to do with your coach. But then, when you're back in your hotel, when you're back, laying down on the bench, what am I doing now? What's important now? Um, And so I think those are just, a few kind of tips and things like that for athletes to deactivate after a really intense competition. It's often easier said than done. So with anything, it's better to practice this in a low stakes environment. So, preseason competitions or regular season games, even at practice, learn to deactivate there so that when the stakes are higher, when the emotions are higher, when the activation level is higher, you already have that skill in your tool bag.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's a great point. We don't want to try something out in the biggest event of our life. we
Right.
want to we want to make sure that it's been tried and tested a little bit. And I think doing it in practice, doing it in low stakes environments, it helps also build a routine.
Mm-hmm.
And through the routine, we can kind of help deactivate or activate as our body gets more accustomed to it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that kind of, covers what I have for the in the moment deactivation. I think I'd like to zoom out a little bit and talk a little bit more about kind of the career deactivation. I don't mean end of career, but I mean those natural kind of down periods, those natural off seasons, or more pointedly for the athletes that just competed in the Olympics. What now, right? You
Mm,
had your eye on this goal for 4 years. It may have been exactly what you expected. It may not have been, but regardless, now you're in this post competition, kind of vacuum where all the goals that you had that were driving your daily routine, everything, all that is kind of gone, right? It might not be all gone. You might still have long term goals, but a lot of it was put into the Olympics. Now you're a couple weeks out, and you know, please, if you will indulge me a little bit, I'd like to tell kind of my own story about, you know,
sure.
that feeling. And it's a much smaller stage, obviously, but I did win a national championship in swimming, Division 3, mind you. But the idea of like, you're the center of attention. You're kind of the one on the podium. People are taking pictures of you. People are interviewing you. You get a trophy. You get all these things, right? You're one of maybe two or three people on your team. In my case, that win national championships. So it's a big deal in the moment. And then our NCAA championships often ends on a Saturday, and then we travel home on Sunday. And for me, you start classes right on Monday, so
Mm,
then you're kind of thrust back into the real world, and it's tough. Your professors don't even know that the meet happened. And it's just kind of business as usual. And if you're not careful, there can be a real like um, kind of a break, right? Not necessarily, um, just it's such a dramatic shift, I guess I should say, right? From all the pomp and circumstance of an event like the Olympics or an NCAA championships to then kind of getting back to regular life. Um, and if you're not careful, it can be hard. It can be it can be tough because there's the post Olympic blues. I think they call it gold medal syndrome.
mm.
But it's just such an emotionally charged event, and then it becomes such a normal life doesn't necessarily compare to that moment. So I think you and I can talk a little bit about. I can share some of my own experiences with that, but also we can talk about ways to safeguard against that happening. So the months, the years leading up to the Olympics, how can we, orient ourselves so that we're not in that situation post Olympics? Um, am I kind of expressing that well enough?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think it's totally understandable to have that kind of really big come down from the Olympics. I think you were, what's the saying? It's lonely at the top. It's only one person wins gold in each event.
Sure.
So, and it's 4 years worth of work. And I think when somebody finally gets there and gets the gold or gets the medal that they're hoping for, what happens next? I don't think a lot of people think about what's life after the Olympics or what's life after the gold medal. Um, and maybe sometimes we put a lot of, or maybe all of the eggs in one basket, and you don't get the recognition that you were hoping, or maybe people don't care about the event that you're in as much as you were hoping for. And you're kind of just there with the medal and just not as maybe happy or fulfilled as you thought you'd be.
Hmm.
And that can be really hard to deal with and sit with.
Yeah.
But I think that maybe goes back to what your goals are and how much of your identity is really wrapped up into being an Olympic athlete and an Olympic gold medalist or whatever medal you're trying to shoot for.
Yeah, absolutely. And identity, I think, is a huge component of it. I think almost necessarily sometimes athletes overemphasize the athletic identity, right? Just because they have to. It's what we dedicate our time and a lot of our passion towards. But having something else there, something else that makes you a dynamic person, no matter what that hobby might be. So rather than feeling like you lost your identity, you can rather just kind of change and move into whatever that other identity it is. Might be fishing, what I think
Mm,
I think Ryan Krauser, the gold medal shot put, said he loves just fishing. Like after the Olympics, just gonna go fishing. That's and
sure.
it's a good reminder just to have other aspects of who you are. To kind of lean back on, to fall back on, and that's kind of across the board, right? You should never be so singular in anything, that that a loss of that identity would be kind of catastrophic for you. Um, so I think that's
Yeah.
the very good point.
And odds are pretty high if you're an Olympic athlete. These skills are going to transfer over to some other portion of your life. Time management, dedication, leadership, communication. These are all skills that probably most, if not every athlete at the games have.
Mm,
And how transferable are those? You're also probably a role model for a lot of people. You could be a coach for somebody. These are all, you can share your story to inspire others. These are all things that can help kind of maybe ease the blues as well as to maybe readjusting our goals moving forward.
hmm
What are some short-term goals that we can set? What are some long-term goals we can set? What are goals that we didn't hit, and how can we maybe readjust it so we do hit the goals for the next time?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. So, maybe like what did you learn and how can you teach the next person, or
Mm.
how can you take the things you've learned and reapply it to a career or reapply it. Absolutely. I think that's great. And the first step in that is recognizing the skills that you've developed, so with athletes, I've sat down and with a pen and paper and be like, what are all the skills that you've developed as a person and or as an athlete, and then they often write down 15 skills and say, well, doesn't that look like a pretty good resume? Like, doesn't that look like a pretty good
Right, right.
special skill? So like trying to think about what you've developed as an athlete in other contexts. I think that's great. And I also think the transience, or the short livedness of the Olympics is interesting, right? It's one of the, I guess, besides American elections, which don't make anyone feel good, but it's the most kind of frequent, or it's the most repeated, yet infrequent thing that really brings the whole world together. Every 4 years, pretty much everyone in the sports world kind of stops what they're doing to celebrate this thing. So being able to recognize that you're a part of something special that only lasts for 2 weeks every 4 years, it's not something that is going to last forever. So having that understanding before you get there kind of gives you an appreciation for what it is, but then also when it's over, you can appreciate it for what it was, rather than kind of hang on it for longer than you need to.
Yeah, it's such a good point. I feel like I don't ever think about Michael Phelps until it's the Summer Olympics and he's the most decorated athlete maybe of all time.
Yeah.
So yeah, always, yeah, I think it's important to put things into context and just recognize and be in the moment, I guess, is probably the best way to maybe it's one of the good ways to approach it, probably.
hmm
Um, and focusing, are you there because of your love for the sport, or are you there because you want recognition and a medal? Are you more focused on the outcomes or on the process? Because if you're only focused on the outcomes, it's going to be a pretty steep drop off when things are over. But if you're there focusing on the process and in the moment and enjoying the experience and loving the competition, which is part of the Olympics, is just having that kind of competition, I would have guessed the Blues might not be as blue. Um, when the Olympics wrap up every 4 years.
Yeah, and the name's escaping me. I didn't have this prepared, but there was an interview with an MMA fighter. He just won, a belt in something. Don't remember the league. Couldn't tell you. But they were like, is this the best day of your life? And he responded something like, the best day of my life was the day I realized I didn't need a belt to be happy. And I thought that was
Mm,
real profound. Same thing with the Olympics. It's and it's about it's being there. You know what I mean? It's not about the belt. It's about being able to be happy, being there, experiencing it, whatever this might be. I know we're talking about the Olympics, but it really applies to, NCAA championships. It applies to, state championships. It applies to regional championships, whatever it is. Just appreciate the opportunity to be there. And I know we kind of apply this to everything, but the emotion of gratitude, the research that's coming out of people that express and really feel gratitude towards other people around them, it's tremendous, the positive outcomes that come from that. Whether it be the people around you, feel better about helping you out when times get tough. They just care more about you, and this is interpersonally, but the psychological benefits, the positive benefits, the confidence that comes from it, even little just small expressions of gratitude, recognitions of, this person helped me, this person helped me get there, so and so drove me to my practices, so and so fed me, all these little things that made you who you are, that can really help, especially post competition. It gives you then another outlet to express some positive emotions towards people around you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think to just hammer home what we've said a bunch of times, on this episode and others, is these need to be practiced.
Mm.
Anything that we talk about, it needs to be practiced. I think, you could do it one day and feel good, but it needs to be done over time for an extended period of time. And a lot of these things, the practicing gratitude, the breathing exercises, the visualization exercises, they only take a few minutes. And they have tremendous benefits by doing them on a daily basis. And I think it's important, just because I think it's really easy to forget that. I think a lot of the times it's a lot harder to forget your physical training, because maybe you can see it in your own body if you don't do it as often, or the physical benefits really affect your mood and stuff. So I think it's easy to forget about the mental practice, but it's important to do it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think people kind of leave the mental aspect up for chance. You know what I mean? Like everything else in their
Mm-hmm.
training, in their nutrition, in their sleep, in their, everyone now is wearing the Whoop wristwatches that track their hydration and their recovery. But then it's like, I hope I'm in a good mood when I get to my competition. I hope I'm optimistic. I've woken up when I'm, negative and pessimistic, and I wouldn't have wanted that to be a competition day, right? But a lot of times people just, hope that they're in the right frame of mind on that competition
Mm.
day. So what you're saying, practice taking control of that, take ownership, learn how to control it and change it. I think that's huge. And so we follow the AAA model, right? The awareness, acceptance, and then action. So you have to become aware of your mental state. You have to accept, whatever it might be. Say, I'm in a bad mood today. I accept that. I noticed it. I accept it. And now how can I change it? So, that's that pathway, like you said, taking control and ownership of your mental state pre and post performance, like we've talked about today.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Anthony, I think we've covered everything that we wanted to cover. I don't know if you have any closing thoughts, but I do, from the Mental Barbell family here. We want to wish you a happy birthday coming up. I know
Thank you.
turning the big 3-0 next in a couple of weeks here. So, welcome to the 30 club.
Yeah, yeah, there's mixed emotions about it for sure. There's excitement and sadness to know that my 20s are behind me. But yeah, thank you. I appreciate it, and hopefully 30s are as good as my 20s.
There you go. And for us aging athletes, there were some 30 and 40-year-olds in the Olympics, so there's still hope for us yet.
Yeah, there's still some hope.
Right on. Well, Anthony, it's been a pleasure as always, and I look forward to talking next time. I always appreciate your insights and your expertise. So I suppose until next time.
Awesome. Same to you.
All right. Have a good one.